Could the New Orleans Saints look to bring back the former LSU Tiger and Louisiana native, Foster Moreau? He had a formal free agency meeting on Saturday with the New Orleans Saints. So we're going to talk about that and a whole lot more. My name is Trey Stroud, and welcome in today's show. But before we get to that, help us out here. Before we start discussing today's news, I want you to go down and share this video on Twitter, because we're trying to get this video out to the entire Who Dat Nation. We're trying to grow this channel to the entire Who Dat Nation, and the best way to do that is if you share. So the way you can do that, click the share button, select the Twitter icon, click post to Twitter, tag me at TreyStrard48. You can also read it right below me, and I will retweet it. I will give you a shout out on social media. So please help us out. Share the video to the entire Who Dat Nation so we can all talk some ball. So let's discuss Foster Moreau. Could a new tight end be incoming? Well, last year, he had 54 targets, 33 receptions, 420 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And we're going to take a look here at the tight end depth chart, And what I want you to notice here is there's something missing. With Juwan Johnson, he's a great pass catcher. With Adam Troutman, he's a great run blocker, or he's just a great blocker in general. Taysom Hill, he's your gadget guy. Lucas Kroll, we haven't been able to see what he can do at the professional level yet. He was on the practice squad last year. And Forstall, we aren't expecting much out of him. So I think that you could go and get Foster Moreau to fit something that's missing on this depth chart. And that is a good blocker and good pass catcher. I think that Adam Troutman could also be further pushed to get better production out of him. He's a good blocker. He'd be a good complement to Juwan Johnson and to the rest of the tight end room. And I think that he would be a good fit schematically. He's familiar with Derek Carr. I think it makes too much sense to not at least call and say, what's it going to cost? And that's why they had the meeting with them. But also worth noting, he did also meet with the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, Foster Moreau's former college quarterback, is Joe Burrow. So there is that connection that they have there. It makes sense as to why he has met with the Bengals. For the similar reasons as to why he can look to meet with why he met with the Saints and why he could look to sign with the Saints. There's familiarity. Not in the hometown team aspect, but there's familiarity with your quarterback and with some of the players on the team and how you could fit into that offense. I think it's worth discussing, and I wouldn't hate it, and I think it would be pretty cool to bring him home. So I want you to let me know, Who Dat Nation, what say you? Should the Saints bring home Foster Moreau? Type Y for yes, type N for no. If you get hit with the YouTube ad break here, go ahead and take advantage of it. Don't click out of the video. Just scroll down, answer the question. By the time you're done, the video will be playing again. All right, so let's talk some more defensive line moves. The Saints have been active in free agency. They've been adding to that defensive line, and Bleacher Report put out a very interesting article suggesting that the New Orleans Saints are actually the best fit for Frank Clark, and we're going to have a lot to discuss, and I want to give you guys my thoughts and my opinions on all of that. But before that, really quick reminder, guys, please help us out. We made so much traction catching up to Broncos Breakdown. We are just under 100 subs behind Broncos Breakdown, so we got to make it happen, or just over 100, We got to make it happen. Help us out. In the past 2 or 3 videos, we've been pulling in 50, 60 plus subs each video. So let's keep the momentum going. Subscribe so we can, 1, put the Vikings back in their place and beat them like we always do. 2, we can get to 15K. And 3, we can punish the Broncos for taking our head coach and Sean Payton and half of our coaching staff and half of our players, it seems like. So subscribe, lock us in for news, rumors, entertaining, and informative content. In all fun and all seriousness, we do like to talk football, but also have a good time while doing it. So lock us in and subscribe. Now let's discuss Frank Clark. Here's what Bleacher Report had to say on why Frank Clark could make sense. He's a savvy veteran with a skill set many teams would love to add, even if he's just a rotational player. The Saints are a team that could use him as a starter. Marcus Davenport had a down year last season, but will they still miss him in their rotation? With Cam Jordan entering his age 34 season, it might be a good idea for the Saints to add a veteran like Frank Clark who can take some of his snaps and help both players sustain success. Now, Frank Clark, he might be getting old. He might be a controversial name, and he might have made some dumb decisions. And, we do call him Uzi Clark here at the Chat Sports office, but still puts up numbers. 39 tackles, 8 tackles for loss, A number I really like here, 56 quarterback pressures last year in 15 games played, 5 sacks. The big takeaway here is you got to get Cam Jordan some help. You got to go get him some help. As we know, and as the Bleacher Report article suggests or said, he's 34 years old. He's coming into his 34-year-old season. He is needing, or he doesn't need to get somebody to bail him out, but he needs somebody to just further help him out. And when you take a look at the depth chart, I'm not even going to acknowledge the defensive tackle situation right now. We're going to talk exclusively defensive ends. What I'll say is love Khalen Saunders. I love that move. Nathan Shepard should be a good piece for the defensive line. But let's focus on defensive end here. Cam Jordan, he's a dog. He's a beast. We love him. Wham, bam. Thank you, Cam. Carl Granderson, he's a good guy to start across from him, but I think Frank Clark could be a better player to start opposite of Cam Jordan, but also to fill in and help out with Tanoh Kpassagnon and help get into that rotation as well, because you have Peyton Turner, the first-round pick out of Houston. He is approaching that draft buzz status as he's hurt. He hardly plays. When he plays, he produces pretty decently-ish, but he doesn't play at the best abilities availability. And here's one big takeaway. Frank Clark plays his best football in the postseason. I think I can speak for all Saints fans here. When I say the postseason is an expectation, the NFC South is weak. The NFC as a whole is weak. You have what I would argue a top 5 quarterback in the NFC. I would even go as far as to say a top 3. I mean, you have Dak, Jalen Hurts, Kirk Cousins. Maybe he's better than Derek Carr. I don't really know. Point being, you are set up to make the postseason. Frank Clark plays his best football in the postseason. You have him be a good rotational piece during the year. You have him be an asset in the playoffs and in a potential run for a Super Bowl, because these are things that the Saints are doing. Everything that they're doing says to me and to every fan of the Saints, we want to win right now. We believe we can do it. So I want you to let me know, Who Dat Nation. Should the Saints go and sign Frank Clark? I think it could be an interesting move to help with the Super Bowl push with a good playoff run. But at the end of the day, I'm not the GM. I'm not the owner. I'm just the guy talking about it on YouTube. So let me know. Should the Saints sign Frank Clark? Type S for sign, type P for pass. I'll be interacting with all of y'all in the comment section. And to round things out, show me the money. Nick Wright, you're an idiot. So let's discuss the current cap situation after the Saints have had an active, very active free agency period. They haven't not been making moves. They've been signing players. And not just signing players. They've been signing players to some nice contracts. Derek Carr, 4-year, $150 million. As we all know, though, it's realistically like a 3-year, $100 million, how it all shakes out kind of thing. You can get out after 2 years. But let's just talk about it, how the contract is. 4 years, $150 million for Derek Carr. Tanoh Kpassagnon, 2 years, $5 million. The special teams ace and defensive back, JT Gray, he is back. Ladies and gentlemen, 3 years, $9.6 million. Juwan Johnson, tight end, Mr. Reliable. So excited to have him back. 2 years, $12 million. Jameis Winston will be back as your quarterback, too, on a $4 million deal, up to $8 million, though, if he does get QB1 reps and if he hits his incentives. Michael Thomas, he is back on a 1-year, $10 million prove-it deal. Can't wait to see what he can do this year. Ugo Amadi, 1 year, $1.08 million deal. Khalen Saunders, as I said earlier, 3 years, up to $14.5 million. Big guy, getting a big contract on a big defensive line. Nathan Shepard, 3 years, $15 million. Love to see him getting in on the Saints defensive line. And also Khalen Saunders, other thing, I really would love to see this guy do a backflip whenever he makes a sack on somebody. I think it would be hilarious because we've all seen the videos of him doing the backflips on Twitter, and he said he can still do it. Anyway, off the topic, but let's get back to it. Jamaal Williams, possibly one of my favorite moves of free agency so far. 3 years, $12 million. Linebacker Ty Summers, he's brought back on a 1 year, $965,000 deal. He was a linebacker on the practice squad last year. And then you brought back punter Blake Gilikin, and you signed offensive tackle Storm Norton, who has an amazing name but does not make amazing plays. Nick Underhill, he did tweet this out. He said that the Saints should have about $16 to $17 million in cap space. A rookie class will cost an additional $3.2 million against the cap. That means the Saints have about $13, $14-ish million to work with. That's a lot of space to make moves. Hey, Nick Wright, how's it feel to be wrong? Again, Saints went from negative $47.5 million to over 16, or over the salary cap by $16 to $17 million. What do you want me to say? Nick Wright. Change your name to Nick Wrong legally right now. Free agent targets that you could go sign, because you need to go make some moves. You have money to spend, and here's a few guys that you could go spend it on. Wide receiver, DJ Chark. I also have an interesting name after this list. You're going to love this. DJ Chark, wide receiver, could be an interesting guy to bring in. I wouldn't hate it. Former LSU Tiger. I think that it would be an interesting guy, or an interesting name and an interesting player to stretch the wide receiver room and make it that much better. Anthony Walker could help fill in at the linebacker position after you lose Caden Ellis. Miles Hartsfield could be a good slot guy. He performed a lot performed pretty well and performed in an underrated Panthers defense last season. Performed very well in the slot. I think that he could be a good replacement for Bradley Roby if you don't bring him back. A'Shawn Robinson, defensive tackle. Y'all saw the depth chart. It's weak. You need to add to it. He's a name that I would like to see. And then the defensive end, Al-Qadim Muhammad from the Bears. I think that could be another name to look out for. Cheaper than Frank Clark, more than likely. But for an interesting name, could the Saints trade for DeAndre Hopkins? Probably not, right? I mean, the 2023 cap hit is $30.75 million. I mean, money's not real. You know, the Saints continue to prove that every year. It's not likely going to happen. I think he goes to another team. The trade price, probably not too much. I mean, at this point, maybe you have to give up a second round. I could see you also honestly getting away with like a third or fourth round, a couple, later round picks, mixing that in together. But I don't think it's realistic. I don't think it'll happen just in terms of that cap hit. That's a lot of money. Saints only have about 13, 14 mil to spend. Things can be moved around, blah, 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 this, that, and the other. I don't think it'll happen, and I think that the Saints will likely go and bring in another wide receiver. If they do, that's a smaller name and a lot less money. Who Dat Nation, thank you so much for hanging out with us. This one might have been a little bit longer of a video, but what should the next move that the Saints make be? I want you to let me know. Be the GM. Put yourself in the shoes and at the desk of Mickey Loomis. What would be the next move that you make? Who Dat Nation, it is always a pleasure. Thank you so much for tuning in and hanging out with us today. No matter where you are or how you're tuned in, we appreciate every single one of you. Please don't forget to subscribe for daily Saints news, rumors, updates, live shows, interactive content. I'm a lifelong Saints fan, and I take pride on making Saints content by a Saints fan for a Saints fan. So please lock us in. Y'all stay golden. We'll see you next time. Peace.